Mate, Wimbledon's not just the oldest Grand Slam, it's the oldest tennis tournament, apparently, founded in 1877. And I just think we're so quick.
Sorry, England are 1-0 up against Germany.
Yeah, who scored?
So, Disney and Formula One are acting like Jake Paul and KSI. And you said to me that you thought this was a really good idea before. So what's great about it?
I don't know, mate. Just your war of attritions made me thinking, oh, maybe Ollie Wilson's right. It's terrible. Everything's fine. Hello and welcome along to Not Another Sports Pod, episode number 49 with myself, David, and Mr. Oliver Wilson. Busy pod this week, Ollie. I want to talk about the Club World Cup. Palmeiras just beating Botafogo. Is Abel Ferreira one of the most underrated coaches in world football? I want to talk about the fact that Jurgen Klopp called the Club World Cup the worst idea in football. England under-21s are kicking off and playing now as we speak. Let's have a little dig into that. Let's look at Cristiano Ronaldo's new contract, which will take him up to the age of 42, where he is earning, Ollie, £488,000 per day, which is quite a lot of money. But let's start by talking about, I was going to start by talking about the Heat. Let's just say this to our listeners, because one or two have over the past few weeks just asked me what exactly goes on in Ollie Wilson's background in the morning, and it is his lovely fiance who's, bustling around making Ollie whatever breakfast he desires, so on and so forth. Ollie, the reason I ask you every week when's the big Ollie Wilson studio reveal happening is partially because of that. Well, when is it exactly, mate? August?
Yeah, we're going to be hopefully done by end of July, early August.
Okay, so do bear with us.
Planning permissions all in and all that kind of stuff. But every
the dog's running around and Ollie Wilson's golf kit's in the washer and all sorts.
We're operating on a shoestring budget here, man. I mean, look at the background. Does that scream professional broadcaster? No. I
don't know, man. It's clinical. I don't mind it too much. Ollie, apparently 34 degrees. I mean, it's heating up nicely in the summer here. 34 degrees maybe on Tuesday. The highest temperature ever recorded in our lovely country is what, Mr. Wilson?
Ooh, 38?
It was 40, and that wasn't too long ago. It was back in 2022, if you remember that scorching summer. A lovely one indeed. I don't think we're going to get quite that high this summer, but very warm indeed. How worried are you about global warming on a scale of 1, which is hoax, to 10, we're all doomed?
Well, I've not had...
Just give me a number.
I've not slept in 3 days because of the heat, so I'll take at least a 7 on this one. And genuinely, I had this conversation with a former pro triathlete this week, and we were discussing the fact that there are a lot of these competitions and major international sporting competitions that take place in a northern hemisphere summer that you're getting to a point of going, maybe we should delay it by a few months, because when you think about the heat, I mean, we're looking at the Club World Cup with players sitting in substitutions dressing rooms.
It's called summer, people, but yeah.
But it's hotter than it has been, and it's hotter than it's previously been. We're running triathlons in Northern Africa at this point in time, as we're doing on Sunday, and places like that. We're running. Major World Cups are going to be taking place in the United States, Mexico, and Canada. Now, only one of those has got a chance of being in a reasonable climate, and that's Canada. Playing in Mexico at this time next year is going to be hot. It's going to be really hot.
Get ready for some cooling break rants from me. But could I just share this with the listeners, because I'm still not quite sure I can get my head around this. So it is pretty hot in the UK at the moment. Ollie was saying he hasn't slept for a few days because of the heat. But somehow... he said he hasn't bought a fan, because obviously there's no AC in the UK because they're weird machines. I don't rate AC. So why haven't you bought a fan, mate? You know they're 9 quid off Amazon.
Yeah, but the fan just blows warm air at you. It doesn't really cool it down that much unless you then
that's why you get a huge tray of ice, 3 fans, and then the ice it will therefore blow cool air at you.
So now I'm wasting electricity on creating the ice to then be blown by the fan, which then increases the amount of electricity I use, which then increases the stress on the global power grid, which means then I'm increasing global warming as I blow the ice at my face. I mean, come on, man. I'm living with an environmental scientist right now.
That is true, Ollie. Yeah. Let's dive into the good stuff then. Probably only 1 week of the year, Ollie, I would suggest that we will lead by talking about tennis, and this is the 1 week of the year, because we are on the eve of Wimbledon, which starts on Monday, which is probably around the time that this pod will come out. I want to talk about the tennis, but first of all, Ollie, let's talk about the fact that tradition has been broken and history has been broken. And we actually talked about this maybe a few months ago, maybe 6 months ago on Not Another Sports.
I think it was a bit longer. It was about 9 months ago. It came out just after the last tournament, and it was about 3 or 4 months after. But yeah, it's been a long time coming, this discussion again, but it's definitely worth having. So
this is the news that next week at Wimbledon, there'll be no line judges for the first time in the tournament's 148-year history, with electronic line calling being introduced, which is very much like par for the course across the tennis circuit now. It's nothing particularly new, but if you're a fair weather, tennis fan, you'll perhaps get a little bit of a surprise when you flick on the BBC on Monday. And I just want to say this about it, Ollie. Now, my general thesis about AI is that AI takes every job. It's just a timeline issue. Is it 2 years or is it 80 years? Spoiler, it's not 80 years, right? So it takes every job. Yes, even you listener that thinks, my job can't be taken by AI. We'll need humans to oversee the AI. Yeah, maybe we will, but it won't be you. So AI takes every single job, right? The graphic designers have gone, the copywriters have gone, tennis line judges have gone, plenty more besides. They will just continue to topple and crumble. I hope I haven't depressed too many people listening to this. I could be wrong. But the thing is, when AI takes every job, Ollie, apart from the fact that people's livelihoods are massively interrupted, in this specific instance with the line judges at Wimbledon, we never ever stop to think about the domino effect with tech. We never ever stop to think, what are we actually gonna miss here? And aesthetically, we lose something. When you watch Wimbledon on TV or you go, and you see these very well-dressed, by the way, line judges calling the lines, standing there. They're part of the perimeter. They're part of the paradigm of Wimbledon and of tennis. And it's so easy. It's so glib to be like, okay, we've got something better. We've got tech. Okay, bang, they're gone, finished. But when something like this happens, you can't scale it back. So they're gone forever now. So you've just broken 148 years of history. And you're never going back. So you'll never have human beings back there. You'll never have that again, ever, 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 ever. And I just think that we rush into these tech decisions so often without really delving into it. Not to get on, last week I was on my soapbox a little bit, but I'm going to go for it again, Ollie, because I read a stat this week that blew me away, mate. 50% of people under the age of 25, given the option, would turn off their iPhones for good. 50% of people under the age of 25 would literally throw their iPhone in the Thames and never participate in it again. Ollie's shaking his head. You're sadly not under 25, Ollie, so maybe you disagree with
That's
this. But given the option, mate,
rubbish.
let's say you could keep laptops open, you could keep doing your job, all of this stuff, but would you get rid of your phone?
I really enjoy when I forget my phone and leave it at home or going out and it's not there. It's a wonderful feeling of like, well, I can't be contacted. I don't need to be contacted, so we'll just... I'm going to go about what I was going to do in my day and not do anything else and not be interrupted by anything and not worry about work emails or anything like that. I find it really interesting that there's a more humanitarian side to what you're saying compared to what we spoke about after the US Open. But we're talking about the same thing when I spoke about Wyndham Clark destroying those lockers at the US Open and kind of like the sanctity of a bit of history that's just there. And whether you care about it or not, it's nice to have those little elements of history. And the same thing is with the line judges at Wimbledon, because everybody would look at a grass court and then see somebody in a pale blue shirt, white slacks, the Wimbledon tie, maybe the little straw boater as well at the far end of the court, and you'd be able to point that out to any tennis fan and a lot of sports fans very quickly that is Wimbledon. And the more you change things like this, the more difficult it becomes to separate Wimbledon from other grass. And in fairness, there aren't many great grass court tennis tournaments throughout the year. So that's another reason why Wimbledon stands out. But the more you take away things like this...
Point. You're robbing these individual events of their complete individuality.
Yeah, 100%. And it's unfortunately it's
sad,
it's a cost saving thing. I mean, I don't know why costs would need to be a thing at all when it comes to something
Wimbledon
like
are loaded, by the way.
Yeah, no, obviously.
Wimbledon, of all the slams, Wimbledon are so loaded, man. Just as a tiny sidebar, not so. Yeah, go.
No,
for it, yeah.
But that doesn't stop. There are loads of companies that are absolutely loaded. But
Amazon
you bring in a cost saving measure, and they'll go, well, all right, if we can trim the fat there, then we can trim the fat there. But it's the uniqueness of having those representatives around the court, which is so unique looking in the Grand Slam on grass court. Like, it's the Grand Slam on grass court. And it reeks of Britishness when you see, even if it's just pomp and circumstance, it looks great and it feels great and it feels like Wimbledon. And as soon as you start taking things away like that, it doesn't feel like Wimbledon. It just feels like another generic tennis tournament at that point.
Mate, Wimbledon's not just the oldest Grand Slam, it's the oldest tennis tournament, apparently. Founded in 1877. And I just think we're so quick.
Sorry, England are 1-0 up against Germany in the under.
Yeah, who scored?
I don't know. I missed it. I wasn't expecting England to have scored after 6 minutes.
It was Harvey Elliott after 5 minutes. Now, what a tournament he's having, Ollie. And in a rather unusual pod, maybe we can just talk very briefly about Harvey Elliott before we come back to Wimbledon. I mean, what is his ceiling as a footballer, Ollie? He's having an incredible under-21 tournament. What is his ceiling? I mean, Liverpool. He's 22 years old. He needs to play football, right? Like, he needs to play. He needs to start somewhere. He's that good. He's a quality footballer. But no one will ever know. Certainly, like, as a Liverpool fan, I don't know how good he is because I've never seen him play 30.
But this is the whole thing with, like, big major clubs and the way that they do things at this point, which is they have a lot of young talent and then they won't utilise a lot of the young talent. They'll loan them out. They'll keep them in the kind of back room as second, third string backups, etc. And that's... I
mean, Mo Salah's in front of him, so what's he going to do?
Of course, but at the same time, it's still a problem for a young developing player. I mean, we're talking about a 21-year-old, 22-year-old that perhaps if he'd had regular game time for the last 3 years, might actually be knocking on the door of the England senior team. And people have made a lot of commotion about the fact that Thomas Tuchel's gone across to watch this game and to kind of support the England under-21s and the FA in this endeavour to try and, you know, make it back-to-back successes in this competition. But let's face it, there are a lot of these players that are 21, 22, 23 years old that if they were considered good enough for this competition and considered good enough for the England senior team, they'd be playing in the England senior team. It's just a difference as a lot of these players. And you look at this England squad, it doesn't reek of like great young names off the team sheet. It's, well, he does all right in the Championship and he's doing well as a backup at Team X, Y, or Z in the Premier League, because we have so many Premier League sides that are just holding on to players that they've got for whatever reason and either loaning them out or giving them backup roles in the senior side at this point, and they're not getting regular first team football. And so they're now at 21, 22 years old, having to really grind hard and make an impression at this sort of tournament, put their name in the hat.
Still a great platform, though.
Oh, it's an amazing platform.
You know, for Harvey Elliott, obviously this is early days in the game. What are we, 10 minutes in, and England are a goal up, Ollie? But let's say England go on and win it. Go on and win this competition. Harvey Elliott's, the player of the tournament. I mean, that is a great platform to him to get his move to, I don't know, a Newcastle, a Tottenham. I mean, if Harvey Elliott plays number 10 at Newcastle or Tottenham for 38 games in a season.
But that's going to cost so much money for a Newcastle or a Tottenham to then take, which is potentially too much money when you can find a foreign player of as equal caliber for a lot less money. And you're not going to be paying to take somebody from a potential rival, etc. So it probably isn't going to happen.
Because he's 40 million. He's a 40 million pound footballer, I'd say. If you're going off the current market.
As a backup at 22.
He's 22 years old. He's English. You get him on a 5-year deal. You could sell him after 3 and make most of that money back or more if he excels.
You might, but you might not. I mean, that's the trouble. We're at a point now in his career where we're looking at 21, 22-year-olds that aren't playing consistently in the Premier League and going, is it going to happen? Are we not? I mean, like, if you were good enough, you'd be playing, or you'd be somewhere outside of Liverpool that you'd be playing at. But you're not. You're a bit part player at this point, and it's very difficult at after 24, if you're not playing consistent football in the Premier League, there's a lot of eyebrows raised. So you basically, if you're a Harvey Elliott, you got
He's got to go
18
now.
months to prove yourself. And this is a great place to prove yourself, but it's a really fine window that a lot of these players have got at this point. And
if you're Harvey Elliott, you played for Liverpool, you won trophies with Liverpool. Why would he go to a Brighton and Newcastle or Tottenham? I mean, obviously there's the element that he'd play, but is he better suited to go to the Bundesliga maybe? You know, I mean, Leverkusen were interested.
But what if you're not comfortable being? It takes. We've seen it so many times. It takes a lot for an English player to make a jump, to go and risk it. We saw Sancho, of course. We saw Bellingham, and we've seen Job as well do the same thing with Sunderland going to Dortmund. But there aren't that many that have made it and done it well. And it's not...
It would be a bold call.
Yeah, it's not like a tried and tested method. And I think there is a thing in... I was thinking about this today in terms of like nationality stereotypes, and we'll come on to it when we talk about the F1. But I was thinking about like Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, where you think Lando Norris is a great driver, great British driver, and he does what all good British drivers do, drives really well, really fast in Formula One. But Oscar Piastri is that like young, arrogant Australian that you meet when you go gap yearing, and he's like, I'm gonna go and everything you're doing, I'm gonna do better than you.
We've got a couple of Aussie listeners, by the way, so let's.
Yeah, well, no, but like there is that kind of, well, if you can do that, we can do it better, and nationality stereotypes can sometimes come into it a little bit of like British people tend to be slightly more reserved, the Americans tend to be slightly more like outgoing, etc. And I just think there's something about British players going and playing abroad that doesn't often pertain to like great success, whether it's going to Italy, France, Germany, Spain. It doesn't often work well. And so it's a big jump for a 23, 24-year-old to put themselves into that boiling pot when they probably rather be excelling at a Brighton or a semi-established Premier League club, you know, a Crystal Palace or somewhere like that.
You know, a Brighton, Newcastle, Tottenham, these are still big. You know, Newcastle, Tottenham, that's a big move. If Harvey Elliott's told he's going to play, you know, 38 Premier League games a season for one of those two clubs, it's a big.
Yeah, it's a great loan move. It is a great loan move, but is it worth the cost for those clubs to sign somebody like him on a permanent basis? I don't think, because the amount of money they'd have.
You don't think 45 million would be a good bit of business for Harvey Elliott? You think it's too much?
I think they'd be able to get the same for cheaper if they went, or what they think they could be, or they could get for the same but cheaper if they went looking abroad. And unfortunately, in this day of financial fair play and what we're dealing with at the moment with the global financial situation, it is cheaper to go abroad. Like it's just the situation that Harvey Elliott's living in, and it's unfortunate. But it's not a huge gamble, but it's still more of a gamble when you can take a cheaper gamble. And a cheaper gamble is better than an expensive gamble, isn't it?
I'm starting to understand why Ollie Wilson didn't buy a fan. Like he's
I'm telling you, man, I've got something coming from Temu for about £3 the next few days. That's a good gamble, you know. That's a cheap gamble.
Have you ever bought anything off Temu?
No, I
bought an electric toothbrush off Temu, and it cost about £4 and came with like 50 spare heads, and I was like, I don't know what is happening here, but it can't be.
And now China own your mobile phone address and data and everything.
I don't even know. But if you ever, because you know those Oral-B toothbrushes, they're like 60, 70 quid, and I was like, how can I? And I went on Temu and got basically a replica for £4. Anyway, let's wrap up talking about Wimbledon. Just on the tennis briefly, just you know, look, I understand that many people listen to this, and many people around Britain, they're not the biggest tennis fans in the world. I get it. But if you're gonna watch tennis at any point in the calendar, it is Wimbledon, and more specifically, let's be honest, it's probably like the second week of Wimbledon when it all kicks in. First of all, the weather's gonna be really, really good, especially in the first week. So the sun's gonna be shining, and on the men's side, obviously you had the Sinner Alcaraz French Open final, and that kind of tees up this beautiful narrative for Wimbledon to have a repeat of that in the final. But the other couple of sidebars to this and subplots are that Jack Draper seeded 4 in the tournament. And, you know, I've said in every pod, the last 10 pods or whatever, big serve, lefty, Loves it flat. Like I think he's got a real chance. Zverev fancy. Go on.
Why the lefty thing? Just out of interest.
Yeah, good question, Ollie. First of all, it just sounds like a good thing to say. Like I've got some tennis knowledge by saying something like that.
There's something about lefties.
Well, it's not dissimilar, mate, to like a left-footed striker. As in, when you watch like a proper left-footed striker, something resonates a little bit different on the eye. And half of it, I believe, is because they create different angles to what you're used to seeing. And it's the same in tennis. The majority of people, what is it? 80% of people are right-handed, right? So you get so accustomed to seeing those angles and seeing those set patterns of play in football. It's exactly the same with tennis and the way the ball moves. And a lefty just creates something a little bit different. It gives people something different to think about, especially on grass. It's just so, if you look at the history of grass courts and the winners, it really does suit the big servers because the ball doesn't bounce up as much as clay or hard court. So, yeah, I think Draper's got a good chance. Then, of course, Novak Djokovic chasing his 25th Grand Slam. Said something interesting in a press conference today. He said that this is the best chance he's going to have. He's reached the last 6 Wimbledon finals, Novak Djokovic. He's reached the last 6 Wimbledon finals. So he knows that if he's going to get that 25th Slam, this is it. And this is why the 25th Slam is important to him, by the way. Because, yes, Novak Djokovic is the greatest of all time in the men's because he's won more slams than anyone else. But in terms of across the women's game, he's on 24 slams, and so too is Margaret Court. Now, I would say 99% of Brits wouldn't know who Margaret Court is, right? She played between 1960 and 1973. She won 24 slams, and that, in the statistical history and in a game so dominated by numbers, that does matter because it means that Novak Djokovic and Margaret Court are both level on 24 slams. Yes, some of those were before the Open era, fine. It doesn't matter. It's like with you like golf, Ollie. I picked up this stat, right? Like nobody knows who Walter Hagen is. Really, outside the golf.
Outside the golf thing. Yeah,
but you know what I mean, right? Most people don't know who that is because he played between 1914 and 1929.
Watch the movie, Will Smith movie, Bag of Ants, and you'll know who Walter Hagen is.
But, he's got 11 majors, mate. And obviously people have heard of Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods. But if you scroll back as far as Walter Hagen, but he's still there. He's on the Wikipedia page. He'll be there, in history. He won that many. So that's why I think number 25 is important to Novak Djokovic. And, I think it should be a really interesting one. So are you going to be watching, mate? Or what's...
I struggle. I struggle with tennis. I always struggle with tennis because I've been.
But you watched the French Open final?
No, I didn't. No, I was. Okay. I was 99% sure I genuinely was working that day. But I remember coming out and seeing all the conversations about it. It was like, that would have actually been like I'll get sucked into it around quarterfinals, semi-finals time. But I'm sorry, I've gone down a real diversion of this because I was thinking about lefties and how. Like being a lefty is something a little unique, and it creates in every single sport, I think. I mean, if Ryan Giggs was a right winger, I don't think we'd talk about him half as much as we do. But he was a lefty. He was an out-and-out lefty, and he's probably one of the best left-footed midfielders that we ever saw in our generation. And unfortunately, he played for Wales rather than England, which no disrespect to Wales, but, can you imagine him on the left side of an England attack for the 20 years that we were watching football before he retired kind of thing? It would have been amazing. And I want to go through some of the left-handed players. And these are left-handed rather than left-footed, so it doesn't bring in footballers, unfortunately, Dave. But this list is outrageous. Of the 25 best ever...
Talking tennis or golf here?
We're across the board in terms of left-handed sports. So we're talking racket, golf, club kind of sports. So James Harden, who is like a modern-day great in terms of the NBA. Monica Seles, left-handed.
Oh, I love Monica Seles, man.
Yep. Oscar De La Hoya. By the way, this is 24 and 23, Monica Seles and Oscar De La Hoya, of the greats of left-handedness of all time. Ken Griffey Jr., one of the greatest baseball players of all time. David Robinson, a great basketball player. Brian Lara, left-handed cricketer. Like, sensational, all-time great test cricketer, Brian Lara. Keep going down. There's a few more hockey and kind of baseball players that a lot of people wouldn't know. Rafa Nadal, obviously. Steve Young, the San Francisco 49ers quarterback, one of the greats of the Jerry Rice Niners era. Lou Gehrig, the baseball player. Obviously, Oh, they do bring in some footers, actually, because Diego Armando Maradona, number 11 of the best lefties of all time is Maradona, apparently, which is a bit mean.
Go on, let's see the top 10 then.
All right, number 10, Manny Pacquiao.
Sorry, I'm not sure I can take the top 10 seriously if Diego Maradona's at 11.
Yeah. It's obviously an American it's an American website, obviously. They're like, oh my God, Diego Maradona, what a great... He used his left hand amazingly against the English, so... Yeah, Manny Pacquiao, number 10. Mm-hmm. Martina Navratilova, number 9.
1-9 Wimbledon's.
Ted Williams, don't know him. 19 major league seasons with the Boston Red Sox, knocking the baseball over Fenway Park, yada, 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 yada. Randy Johnson, Major League Baseball pitcher. Barry Bonds, the home run record holder, number 6. Phil Mickelson, number 5. That was the one I was thinking of golf. Lionel Messi, number 4. Bill Russell, the great basketball player, number 3. Babe Ruth, number 2. And then the greatest lefty of all time, Wayne Gretzky. There is something about a lefty that not only makes it, I think, more aesthetically pleasing, because you see it and you think, oh, there's no way I could... Have you ever tried playing a sport left-handed when, as a right-hander, like tried tennis or anything like that? It's...
Oh man, anything. Try brushing your teeth with your left hand, right?
It took long enough to learn how to like pass competently as with your left boot when you grew up being a right-footed kid kind of thing. I mean, it's tough. So it looks that bit unique. And I also wonder if like being a lefty, it's like being a southpaw, like Manny Pacquiao, for instance, like being that southpaw is that it creates a whole new dimension for somebody to have to deal with, because you're trying to put it on their backhand, it's their forehand. You're trying to, show them to the left-hand side, but they want to be shown to the left-hand side when it comes to hockey or something like that. Like, it completely reverses everything you're kind of thinking of. The only one that I don't really understand a little bit, actually, not to bring it back to this every single time, but is golf, because golf, you're playing against the course rather than against the person. So you're not putting them in a position where they're kind of,
But there's just less left-handers in general, so obviously the statistics are going to be weighted like that.
Fewer left-handers, yeah.
The less fewer. Here he goes. Just on the total Wimbledon singles finals, another stat for you.
Sorry, yeah.
So across men's and women's, there have been 267 Wimbledon singles titles competed. Only 26 of those have been won by a left-hander. Anyway, let's move on. Let's talk about the Club World Cup, Ollie. Look, the two Argentine sides went out. I know the first couple of weeks of the tournament were all about South American sides are amazing. The Argentine sides are out. The 4 Brazilian sides are through. Palmeiras have just beaten Botafogo in the last 16, and Palmeiras have gone into the quarterfinals. I want to talk about them specifically because over the last 5 or 6 years of covering South American football, I think the coach that has impressed me most has been Abel Ferreira. He's the coach of Palmeiras. He's a mini Mourinho, and I mean that in the greatest of complimentary ways, because he's a mini Mourinho before Mourinho became a grumpy old odd man in Turkey. Like he's a winner. The football is painstakingly boring, but he's a complete winner. He's a heart on his sleeve, gets sent off 5 times a season kind of thing, argues with everyone. And, he's had incredible success with Palmeiras, a couple of Libertadores titles. And when you look at this Club World Cup, actually, Ollie, and you look at, if I can just get it up in front of me, the draw for the Club World Cup, the fact that Palmeiras have now beaten Botafogo in the quarterfinals, the top half of the draw actually, I think, is way better than the bottom half, way nicer, way kinder, more opportunity, because Palmeiras will face the winner of Benfica or Chelsea. Yes, that's a big European club, but you avoid the Bayern Munich, you avoid the Paris Saint-Germain, you avoid the Real Madrid. So I think Palmeiras actually have a decent chance to get to the semi-finals. And if Abel Ferreira and Palmeiras get to the semi-finals, because by the way, Fluminense aren't going to do that, and Flamengo aren't going to do that. Like, so those two clubs won't.
You don't think Flu have got a chance against Inter?
No. No. And so Palmeiras, I think I could obviously look very silly on this pod next Monday, but I think Palmeiras, if Abel Ferreira can take them to the, if he could beat a Benfica or a Chelsea and take a Palmeiras to the last 4 of the Club World Cup, when you combine it with what he's done in the league and the Libertadores, I think a European club will be mad not to take a big punt on him. I mean, he can only be 40 odd, maybe. Early 40s he's got to be, I would have thought, Ollie. So I think he's a real star in the making. And he's basically what Gallardo could have been.
Yeah, but we've said this about a number of people. Like,
have we?
Well, we've said this about Gallardo.
Yeah, we got seduced by the Marcelo Gallardo story.
But I don't think with Gallardo, I don't think we were seduced. I genuinely think that we were let down by his career choices at that point. Do you not think?
I mean, he's personally let us down. No,
for you, I think it did get personal at one point. But yeah,
Ollie Gallardo is like this is not dissimilar to Ruben Amorim. Like, maybe he's a fantastic coach, but if you make a couple of horrendous career choices, you suddenly end up with egg on your face and a really damaged reputation. That's what happened with Gallardo, and that's what at the moment's happened with Ruben Amorim. But Club World Cup, where do you stand, Ollie, in terms of the quarterfinals? And obviously the big story from the first couple of weeks was how successful South American clubs are going to be. But like I say, the Argentine sides are out, and I mean, how successful is it really?
Well, the success of the South American clubs wasn't necessarily the winning or losing for me. I think I tried to make that clear. It was the South American supporters that saved the Club World Cup in terms of people actually turning up to these games and caring. And the fewer South American sides that there are in this competition as it goes on, I mean, the fewer supporters I imagine turn up until we get to a semi-final. And I genuinely believe it's about being in a semi-final for a lot of the supporters that will be going to these games, because Flamengo against Bayern Munich should get a decent attendance. Real Madrid against Juventus should. If it was based in New York, it's a little bit different with the Miami being based in Miami at that point. And I don't want to sound like I'm getting into like a weird conversation with this, but I do think where teams are playing and where there are demographics of people in the US does come into it a lot. Like, if you put Juventus in a game at like MetLife Stadium in New York, you'd have a lot of Italian Americans coming out. Like, it just would be. In the same way you have, say, the South American sides playing down in Miami and in the southern states, it works a lot better because there are a lot of natives of South America and Central America that would be willing to go and support those teams in those areas. I don't think that's like anything controversial in saying that. I mean, you're asking a lot to get like Al Hilal, maybe. I don't know where there's like a Middle Eastern basis, for instance, in the US or anything like that.
England have made it too.
Yeah, but everybody loves the Premier League in like that annoying...
No, England have made it 2-0 against Germany.
Oh yeah, Amari Hutchinson. Yeah, sorry.
So Lee Carsley is possibly the greatest coach, the most underrated coach out there at the moment.
I think
back-to-back European under-21.
Well, as we touched on last week, in terms of like somebody to take over after Thomas Tuchel, like why would you not give it to the guy that's had success with all of these youngsters anyway? Like,
if Lee Carsley looked like Ruben Amorim,
to be honest, mate, if Lee Carsley wasn't Irish, didn't play for the Irish national team, there would be something in it. But when Lee Carsley was given temporary control of the England national team, so many people were calling into like TalkSport and 5 Live saying we don't want to have somebody that's played for Ireland managing the England national team, which is ludicrous.
Well, ludicrous because Thomas Tuchel's the boss.
Yeah, well, it was ludicrous because we've had people that have coached freaking Italians, Sweden. Like the past that shouldn't represent the present when it comes to the England national team manager. And what we have at the moment in the present is somebody that completely understands what these young players need to get success out of it on an international stage. So I've got no problem with Lee Carsley taking that job.
So, but I mean, if you're Lee Carsley, what's a good career move for you? Now, I mean, like back-to-back European Championships, that's not nothing at all.
It's incredibly successful. I genuinely can't think of a nation that's done it in terms of the under-21 championships. It's won it back-to-back. I think Spain have gone close, but I don't think the Spanish have actually done that.
We'll have to double-check. Obviously, England did it back in the 80s. But I think to do it in the modern era with a completely different group of players that he did it before is definitely something. Look, there's only 28 minutes on the clock, so anything
obviously
could happen.
Crap the bed against Germany and lose 3-2, but
more than possible. Sorry, Early, we were talking about Club World Cup. Let me ask you this: you were in mid-flow of something. So
I was talking about like how the quarterfinals, semi-finals, etc. I think people will start caring generally when it comes to the semi-finals, maybe the quarterfinals of this competition. But at this point, like, I still don't you were talking about the Brazilian side seeing it as a success. I mean, I would struggle to look at an Inter team that's lost the Champions League final and see them caring about a game against Fluminense in this competition at this point, when we're in the late June in the hot heat of like being down in Atlanta or like down in Orlando or Charlotte. Like, we're playing hot, draining football at the end of June when these guys have just lost the biggest game of their careers. So
isn't that not a good thing? Because it gives them an immediate chance to...
It's a great thing for Fluminense. As we spoke about last week, I would have thought, because they're in the middle of their season and they're ready to go, as opposed to an Inter Milan side just taking the most crushing blow of a team that is going to get picked apart and moved away because they're too old, all that kind of stuff. Like, mentally, you're not going to be like that there to compete in this.
Well, you could see it both ways, because it also could be an incredible opportunity for them to, if they won the Club World Cup, if Inter Milan won the Club World Cup, it would not avenge getting beaten 5-0 in a Champions League final, but at the same time, it would go some way.
It wouldn't, though. But it wouldn't take away that pain. They're always going to be the team that lose 5-0 in a Champions League final. And I think, to be honest, I see this a little bit like the UEFA Nations League, which is a great tournament once you get to a certain point. But like, there are a lot of teams that will make changes, mix things up. We've already seen, like, I'm not saying that Real Madrid are treating this like a pre-season tournament in terms of like it's all friendly and all that, but they wanted to make sure they had Trent Alexander-Arnold in there to be able to start ingratiating him into the side, etc. So there is a point of these sides are looking forward, particularly the European sides, are looking forward to the next season, which is the highest priority, as opposed to draining themselves and killing themselves at this point in this competition. Whereas, you look at Palmeiras are going to be through, they'll be taking on Benfica or Chelsea. Great. I could see Fluminense doing Inter. Like, just in terms of, this is a deflated Inter side, we've got to the knockout stages. They're heavily biased in terms of what the financial payouts are going to be, because the payouts aren't based on how far you get in this competition. It's how far you get in the competition levied with your status in global rankings, social media rankings, all these ludicrous platforms. So it's not based on if Inter get to this point and Fluminense get to one step further, Fluminense get more money. Inter will still take home more money than the majority of these Brazilian sides because of where they stand in terms of status in FIFA. So you're already losing out on that like financial impetus to keep going. Whereas for the South American sides, that impetus is still there.
Club World Cup was football's worst idea ever, Jurgen Klopp. That's what he said.
What's his reasoning then? Because I've not seen this.
Well, he has said it's all about the game and not the surrounding events, and that's why the Club World Cup is the worst idea ever implemented in football in this regard. People who have never had or do not have anything to do with day-to-day business anymore coming up with something. This is insane money for participating, but also not for every club. Last year it was the Copa America, the European Championships, blah, 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 blah. Lots of football. Look, I don't know. I don't think it's the worst idea ever. I think there are other things that have been the worst idea ever.
What's the worst idea ever?
I do not think. Say again?
What's the worst idea ever in football?
I think historically, VAR will go down as the biggest net deficit to the game in my lifetime or in a generation. To the actual, because you can talk a lot. People say, what's the biggest thing that's wrong with football? And of course, people say there's too much money in a game and all of this. And I completely understand all of that. The monopoly of the biggest clubs in the world. I completely understand all of that. But in essence, the sport and it's the absolutely fundamentals of the sport have been altered with VAR. And for that reason. Anyway, I don't want to... I could...
No, but it's interesting because like people are talking about this. And I can understand why, to an extent, Jurgen Klopp might be saying this, because it's taking up a summer where there's valuable rest to be had. Because we've already discussed European Championships, World Cups, UEFA Nations League competitions, etc. And this is now a heavily weighted, financially biased towards those club teams that pay them a hell of a lot of money and will expect them to play in these competitions, etc. But you're then asking people to play not just 38 games a year in the Premier League, plus extra games in the Champions League. So then you're pushing that up to 45, 46 games in a Champions League season for a lot of these players, along with domestic competitions. Then you're taking that up to like 50. I mean, this could push it for a lot of players to be 60 to near 70 games in a season. And I understand why you'd say that as Jurgen Klopp, to say this might be the worst thing to happen, because what do we want to see? As football supporters, we want to see, and people that like take all the situational kind of where we are in terms of careers, jobs, etc., Dave, we want to see the best players playing the best football in the best condition that they can be. And nobody wants to see things like a Marco van Basten having his career cut short because he got chopped down. No one wants to see things that almost happened to players like Claudio Caniggia, etc., in Italia 90, when Cameroon like literally went to try and hack the living bejesus out of him or something like that. Nobody wants to see some of the best players in the world losing out on career time, and therefore time that we get to see the potential best players in the world playing football for unnecessary reasons. And this might be, considering that we had all of the furore about an extra 15 minutes in World Cup games, for instance, after the Qatar World Cup, and people were saying that the stoppage time, etc., that got added on, 15 minutes added on to the 90 in total, with half-time stoppage time and full-time stoppage time being too much, and that's what's going to push players to the breaking point. Well, adding an extra like 7, 8, 9 games in the summer where it's meant to be their respite, that is a potential problem for players and their longevity in the sport. And that's why I can understand where somebody might say that something like this, whether it's the Club World Cup, whether it's the added importance of a UEFA Nations League, whether it's the expanded World Cup, whether it's an expanded European Championships, that's why I understand why somebody might say this is one of the worst things to happen to football, because we are genuinely putting players' longevity into question when we want to see the best players playing for as long as possible, because we've lost a lot of good players unnecessarily to various injuries, ailments, etc. And there's no need to continue to compound that by adding on extra footballing time.
I mean, where does this end, Ollie? Does it end with the governing bodies starting to reduce tournaments? I would suggest not.
That's never going to happen.
No. So what is going to happen? What is going to happen is you end up with squads of 40, and you end up with assistant managers taking games in certain tournaments. For example, Arne Slot's assistant will take the Carabao Cup games, for example. I believe that'll be it. And you've got squads of 40, which I believe is quite part and parcel for some American sports. I don't like it, but that's the way we're going. Okay, let's talk about England under 21s. How are they getting on? It's still 2-0 with approaching half-time.
It is half-time, and it's 2-0 from what I can see. I've got my little screen here with Channel 4. Yeah, it's 2-0. Amari Hutchinson doubling the advantage. Another prime example of a player that's like very good for Ipswich Town. And, you know, doors were wide open this season to make an impression, and made an impression in the Premier League to a certain extent. But, like, there's no room. We're getting
38 minutes played. I don't know what parallel time universe Mr. Ollie Wilson's on. My kickoff was at 8 o'clock, so can't be half time. Anyway.
Podcast is dragging on. That's all it is.
Let us.
Let
us move on, Ollie.
Just in terms of there's a problem, not a problem, but there's an issue to be discussed about. Like, you've got something like Amari Hutchinson and a lot of these young England players where there isn't room for them to go further, right, in Premier League sides, etc. So might open up opportunities to make the Championship better, make that a more exciting league, etc. But we're seeing this a lot in sport in general, I think, when we talk about young guns coming through in tennis, in Formula One, in golf, etc. There needs to be opportunities for the next young great ones to step in and take their place, or give them an opportunity to maybe dine out at a top table at some point or some situation, whether it comes to, you know, a Wimbledon berth via a sponsorship, whether it comes to getting an opportunity in, let's say, a Ryder Cup team or a President's Cup team or something like that, whether it comes to getting opportunities in cricket and, you know, being a middle order batsman or something like that. But my question to you is, if we're looking at, for instance, like youth sports right now, we're looking at an under-21 team. We're not looking at an England senior side. We're not looking at first-team starters for the England squad. And I wouldn't say there are many players in this side that are looking to be a starter or a player in the next England squad going to the World Cup, for instance. why do we think that all of these youngsters should have that opportunity if there isn't an opportunity to be taken?
Well, there will be, because there'll be so many tournaments, mate, that squads will be 40 players deep, and there'll be there'll be an opportunity to play. So there'll be so many tournaments that you can have a squad of 40 and everyone still gets minutes.
Not in an England setup.
Not in an English setup, but I mean just across the board in football generally. Like, yeah.
Really?
It does not end with governing bodies cutting down the amount of games. Like, we're gonna ride this till we fall off a cliff. Like, they're just going to be more and more and more games added until it's 90 games a year, and it will just be squads of 35 footballers. That's the only way this ends. And 7 subs.
Yeah,
that's it.
Yeah, sorry, that just feels rubbish to me. That feels horrible, because don't you want to see... Wow. But, like, isn't the point of these players getting an opportunity to develop them playing consistent football as opposed to playing, like, odd minutes in, like, a Carabao Cup tie or a Champions League qualifier or something like that? I mean, when it comes down to important contests, it'll be Premier League football, Champions League football. You won't see a hint of any of these players.
Can I ask you a question, Ollie, completely unrelated?
I mean, sure.
To anything. Just because it's annoyed me the last 5 minutes. Noisy neighbours. Is it better to leave a note so they've got time to digest it? You know, very courteous. Excuse me, if you don't mind, the floorboards are super thin. Could you please keep it down? Like, is that better? Or is it better to just knock on the fucking door?
Well, I can't hear your neighbours, so unless you can hear mine.
No, I'm talking about mine.
Yeah, I can't hear your neighbours.
Okay, I certainly can every day of my life. But what's the better option there?
I think you need to work out a time that it's...
But would you knock?
Inappropriate.
Knocking's the one that you don't want to do. But
nah, you got to do it face to face.
But do you not think the note gives someone a bit of time to kind of...
No, because the note is like you shying away, and then that's easily torn up or thrown in the bin. If you want to actually make an impression, you knock on the door and say, "Hey guys, look, I'm doing X, Y, or Z. I was just wondering if it's possible to..."
I mean, I've knocked before.
And then they've spurned
at like you. 1 a.m, and that's the like, am I going to do this? Yeah, I'm going to knock. Yeah, but that was like a year ago, and then they sort of quietened down.
Knocking at 1 a.m. is punchy.
Yeah,
that's more aggressive than any note. Why are you talking about a note if you've knocked at 1 o'clock in the morning? If you've knocked at 1 o'clock in the morning,
a year ago, and it's still going out on pod. This has been a bit.
Yeah, but if you're knocking at 1 o'clock in the morning, that's like a.
I knocked on their door because they've been loud. At 1 o'clock in the morning.
But that's a real like. Look, tone it down. Once you've knocked at 1, you can't knock at like 9.
A year later?
Yeah, you can't knock at 9.
Again.
You can't be like, look, we've had a year. 1 was unacceptable, but I've just realised that
Who shall I wait
10
for the
is not great either.
Shall I figure out when it was? I'll probably go back through our WhatsApps and figure out. Right, let's talk about... I just want to wrap up any other football. Yeah, well, there's 2 things I want to talk about here. I will talk with Cristiano Ronaldo first, Ollie, then we'll get on to substitute players being interviewed during Premier League games. Cristiano Ronaldo signed a new 2-year contract with Al Nassr. That means he will stay with the Saudi league club beyond his 42nd birthday. This is not about Cristiano Ronaldo as a footballer, clearly. This is about Ronaldo's brand. It's about the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It is about Ronaldo's relationship with that nation, right? And he's being paid. I don't know whether you've seen the figures for this, Ollie. If you haven't, just get it up now while I'm rambling, because the numbers are so big, it wanders into being just laughable territory. I mean, the ones that pop off the page at me are the 488 grand a day. I think that's right. 488 grand a day. I think that's correct.
178 million a year.
£488,000 per day. Plus, you know, the chuck of the private chef and I think there's 16 members of staff and the jet and all the rest of it. So
yeah, 490,671 a day.
I guess the thing is, why it's interesting is because this is not someone signing Lamine Yamal when he's 21, right? This is not like Paris Saint-Germain giving him like a 10-year contract and it all being about football. This is just about Ronaldo's brand. It's about his social media reach. And it's about what he can do, I suppose, for Saudi and what they can do for him in the future.
What can they do for him though?
But is it not just like one post from Cristiano Ronaldo positively about Saudi Arabia? I mean, you can't put a price on that. That's worth £500,000 a day. I'm being serious.
Has Cristiano Ronaldo changed a lot of perspectives?
But mate, I don't think it's his job to change the perspective about Saudi Arabia, because that's an impossible thing to do from one person in a relatively short period of time. But if you're saying Cristiano Ronaldo, who is a globally recognized name and brand, is he part of the softening of the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to the world, and therefore that will benefit Saudi Arabia in terms of financial deals, global standing in the world? Like, could that be worth £500,000 a day? Probably.
No, but he was brought to Saudi Arabia either to boost the Saudi Arabian football game or to change perspectives of the country, depending on how you look at it. Like, depending whether you want to go into like the whole sports washing side or whether you want to go into growing the game. And to a certain extent, Cristiano Ronaldo going to Saudi Arabia has changed Saudi Arabian football in terms of it is in high sports production. It is a game that continues to appeal to big players for big money, albeit it seems that the contract length ends up being about between 9 to 15 months before those players decide they don't want to be involved again. So in terms of changing the face of Saudi Arabian football, I'd argue that Cristiano Ronaldo has started to change the face of Saudi Arabian football. In terms of changing the face of Saudi Arabian sports, which cynical people would say is why he was brought into Saudi Arabian football in the first place, that hasn't really changed yet. In terms of detractors and skeptics and everything else that has gone on in Saudi Arabian football. Now, Saudi Arabia has, since Ronaldo has joined playing football with them, has won a World Cup bid successfully, which may well be another big part of the reason why he's there, etc. That I have no idea, but it seems to all be falling into place of the Saudi Arabia changing the narrative around their football and everything like that.
Mate, my shirt's going to have to come off. It's fucking boiling in here, by the way. So anyone watching on the YouTube.
It's where we go into not another pod after hours.
So fucking hot.
Dude, the watershed is in like 11 minutes. You gotta wait.
Now's the time to knock on the neighbour's door.
This one's for the only fans of NASP.
Right. Sorry, Ollie. Carry talking about Cristiano Ronaldo.
No, but if you're talking about changing the face of Saudi Arabian football, I'd argue he's done that to a positive extent in terms of his move there has drawn a lot of other players to go to Saudi Arabian football. It's increased the level of the league. It's probably increased the attention around the league, etc. Well, it definitely has, without a doubt. But is any individual worth $500,000 a day? $500,000. Like what? Knowing what, for instance, like we live in an influencer world, right? In terms of there are individuals that are influencers. I know people that will get paid like $4 or $5 grand for 3 social media posts working with a certain company. That pays their bills. That works for them amazingly. We're also living in a world where the companies themselves are acting like social media influencers. So, for instance, when you see, so these are like some of the only influencers I know, but KSI and Jake Paul get together to create Prime, right? As we were talking about last week. So that's 2 influencers coming together to create a brand to create more money off. I'm going to take my influence and the other influence. I'm going to put them together and we're going to create something that everybody then in that influence will want to buy.
Now we're getting closer to the Ronaldo Saudi thing.
But we're seeing this, like companies are acting like influencers now. So, for instance, I was watching the Formula 1 qualifying today in Austria, and there is a logo around the Austrian F1 track, which is a Mickey Mouse silhouette and an F1 logo, and it's Mickey Mouse plus F1 coming 2026. So Disney and Formula One are acting like Jake Paul and KSI, and they're going, hey, do you like Disney or do you like Formula One? Or do you like both? Hey, if you like any of this, we're going to create something that creates money for us through 3 subsections. The people that like Formula One and Mickey Mouse, the people that like Formula One, and the people that like Mickey Mouse. And we're going to create money off all of that. In this, what was the other one I was thinking about earlier? Oh, the NFL and creating and the Club World Cup. The NFL have released soccer jerseys based on NFL teams. I love American football and I love football. I'd never in my right mind wear a Philadelphia Eagles soccer jersey for the sake of showing that I'm either a soccer fan or an Eagles fan and that I like both of them at the same time. Like it's this cross collaboration of companies acting like influencers, and Ronaldo is taking like, I'm an influencer.
We nearly got through a pod without talking about Donald Trump, but honestly, all his mannerisms, I don't know how you picked that up. Like, it's the palms for those listening on audio, not YouTube, which is 99% of you. It's the palms open, but like, I don't know how you do it. Is that just something that everyone has now? Because we've seen so much of it that everyone like, I do the like with the finger, with the index finger, I do that a lot. Like,
not good. There's a
lot of money,
a lot of NFL fans over here, a lot of soccer fans, and we're gonna bring them together.
He's so good at the World Cup. I mean,
but it is, and it's weird to me now. It's really weird because we're just seeing everything like this is done for just dollars, money. There's no. Ronaldo is seen as an asset for Saudi, I'm sure, to be able to then. Well, if you like Ronaldo and you like football, you'll come to Saudi Arabia and we can join these two together. Like,
welcome to advertising, Ollie. That's how it works, mate. Like, you connect fast cars and cigarettes and like hamburgers and like
that's nothing just, unmarketable. It's nothing like just purely sacred. I mean, this was the whole point of like the frustration and anger around like the US players getting paid, for instance, for the Ryder Cup. Like the Ryder Cup stood there as if you play for Team Europe, you play. You get sponsorship from your freaking sponsors like TaylorMade love you and all that kind of stuff if you make the Ryder Cup team. But you don't get paid to play in the Ryder Cup. And then the Americans went, yeah, but we get paid for the PGA and we should get paid for representing America because other people get paid for representing America. I've got a feeling
we're going to get more and more annoyed at modern sport over the coming
I don't know how we can because we've already worked out that I'm the most miserable bastard when it comes to all of this stuff. And I just want to see sport played for the right reasons than anything else.
Can we just talk about the fact that Cristiano Ronaldo has 934 goals, I think? I thought it was a couple more than that, actually. He's got 930 something.
Just a couple.
Goals. I think I've also got 938 somewhere. Now, if he gets to 1,000 goals, let's say, between Portugal and 2 more years in Saudi, Ollie, he's going to get, maybe he won't get the 1,000, but he'll be kind of 10, 15 shy, and then there'll be some way of getting him over the line to 1,000. Like, if he does get to 1,000 goals, he'll be the first player to have scored 1,000 goals with them all on camera. Yes, I know Pele scored 1,000 goals because he scored 17 in a friendly behind closed doors, and etc. But realistically, we can't be counting that. Then we've got Erwin Helmchen, the German who played between 1924 and 1951. Look, if the goals aren't all on camera, I don't really think we can count them. So that's where Cristiano Ronaldo, if he does hit 1,000 goals, like, does that mean something, Ollie? Where does that alter, enhance, or?
Of course, it means something. Like it's the first documentable forward to be able to hit 1,000 goals. Like, it's an incredible achievement. Like, Cristiano Ronaldo is a human specimen of incredible achievement in terms of his longevity in the sport, the highest level that he played to until he went to Saudi Arabia, in terms of the success he's had at every single team where he's become the figurehead of every side that he's ever played for, and the achievements that he's had for club and country. And even the success at the Euros when he had to sit out for the final and still acted like the freaking head coach on the sideline did, like, I think the most for any player's kind of public opinion than anybody's ever seen in terms of it. Like, it wasn't there about me. It looked like he was the guy that was about let's win this as Portugal more than anything else. And it was a beautiful thing to watch. So reaching 1,000 goals is amazing. And it's an accolade that should be lauded. But, like...
let's just put a full stop there on lauded. You know, that's good. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about something, Ollie, that is actually... I saw this, and... You know, so many, as regular listeners of this podcast will know, so much stuff to do with the modern game Ollie and I kind of push back on. I actually think this is the first good thing the Premier League have done in quite a while, and that is they are introducing interviews for players that have been substituted in a Premier League game. Now, of all the things that have wandered or crept or been forced down the throat of footballing fans and match-going fans and people that watch on telly recently that aren't very good, 5 substitutions, VAR, this, that, too many tournaments, everything else. This, I actually think, is a dynamic, fun, media-savvy, front-foot decision to really capture the emotion of footballers while the game's going on. By the way, this isn't totally unique. Obviously, other sports have been doing this for ages. I know also in football they've been doing this in Liga, and they do it in La Liga in half-time, so Premier League possibly slightly behind. Ollie Wilson's distracted. Is it the dog, the fiance, or what's going on?
I didn't realise Germany had pulled one back before half time. So it's 2-1.
Yeah, so 2-1 now.
Vapor.
So Lee Carsley actually is a bottle job who shouldn't be anywhere near a top job. You just take whichever one of those you want, folks. I'm very malleable in that sense.
Okay, so you've covered La Liga with these substitution interviews, etc. What makes them great? What makes them worthwhile?
First of all, it doesn't take away from the sport in the sense that clearly it's not a direct comparison with VAR or 5 subs, right?
Yeah, it doesn't stop the game.
But those things, they take something from the sport, whereas this does not take anything. It doesn't slow the game down. It doesn't change anything from the sport or the game in terms of from a first principles perspective. All it does is add. Now, of course, Ollie, you're going to get that it's all about the 3 points. We worked really hard. We're going to try harder in the second half. Yeah, it's all about the team. I'm disappointed to be taken off, but that's the manager's decision. Of course, we're going to get all of that. That is what it is. These guys are media trained from the age of 9 at these big clubs. Of course, you're going to get a lot of mundane chat. But you are also occasionally going to get nuggets of gold. And you're going to see a footballer really reveal something in the middle of the game, which creates like a subplot and a talking point across all the socials. So, yes, there's going to be a lot of boring stuff here. But occasionally you're going to get a moment of magic because interviewing players at halftime, what it does, as opposed to interviewing players before or after the game, you catch them in a moment where their brain isn't fully settled. They don't have all these people around them. And occasionally you will get a good line out of it. And listen, it's better than listening to 4 pundits talk cliches in the studio anyway. So I prefer to hear something boring that a player says rather than what the pundits are saying.
So these are going to take place at halftime rather than in the middle of the game.
But I believe so, yeah. Although not directly, I think it's a good question. I don't know the exact idea. The La Liga ones are in the tunnel at half time.
To any substituted
I'd have to look
player
into a little bit more.
In La Liga, for instance, if you get substituted, or is that do you have to come off the pitch?
No, so in La Liga it's half time.
So La Liga, do you have to have come off the pitch to be eligible for an interview?
No, they do grab some players that are going back out just before.
Yeah.
That are going to play the second half. So I guess this is slightly different in that regard.
So that would be more understandable if it was, for instance, like speaking to a player just before going back out. This is so US sportsy in terms of, hey, we spoke to Pete Carroll just as his team came out just before halftime here, and Pete Carroll was saying the Seattle Seahawks, they just got to operate on defense. We haven't executed nicely, and we just got to get that thing going. Back to you in the studio, guys. It's so one note when it comes like that. If you're interviewing the guy as he's come off, that I will understand. There's a reason to try and utilize that for the broadcast. There's a terrible reason for that to be utilized from a club, player, and manager perspective. Can you imagine when you get somebody pulled off after 35 minutes because he's having an absolute shocker? He's living with the manager. There's tension everywhere across the bench. And then poor sodding Jules Breach steps in on the touchline and has to wake her way through the dugout to talk to player X, who's been brought off after 35 minutes. Oh, so things weren't going well for you out there, were they? Well, I thought I was having a great game, but the manager obviously doesn't believe in me, so I guess I'm just going to have to stick with it and sit on the bench. That's golden. That's a great piece of audio and a great piece of footage for a TV company. But if the players are aware and they're media trained for these sorts of things, it's going to lead to the exact same interview that you get as a player who's just won the FA Cup, for instance, and they drag them up on the advertising hoarding. You're man of the match. How's it feel? Oh, it's amazing. It's great for the fans. It's great for us. And I just want to go and celebrate because that's all I want to do is just go and celebrate. And that's where my authentic personality can become. It depends how they actually do this. If it's a player that's just come off and you get 30 seconds literally as he's just come off, then you might get something out of it. And it's a disaster for Premier League teams, managers and players if that's what happens.
So details have yet to be released on how often this will happen in matches. But BBC Sport have been told substituted players will be allowed to cool down before being interviewed on the touchline during the game. Dressing room access will be restricted, never allowed during the team talks. Such coverage is a regular feature in the US. It also says camera operators
are allowed on the pitch for goals.
From the start of next season, have you seen this? Be allowed to enter the field of play to film close-up of the goal celebrations. Again, I think that's a great thing. Harmless one, no?
I mean, like, to be honest, when has a camera operator not been near a goal celebration aside from a halfway line hit? Like, it's an unnecessary addition. It won't change how we view the game because players tend to put their celebrations toward the nearest camera anyway. The only trouble is you might have somebody sliding on their knees and the camera operator's walking to them and they've misjudged how much that player's going to slide to them and the camera operator gets taken out by them. Again, it's grey television. That's going to be fine. That's not going to change anything. It's the dressing room access. We're talking about, you and I have seen what happens either at the very start of or pre world feeds, for instance, with Serie A, where they're in the dressing room. And it's kind of awkward. There are players getting changed. There's no team talk taking place, but it's just like players walking around in either their pants, socks, half a shirt or whatever. That's not really going to create great television. That's going to be, this is what it's like in the Liverpool dressing room before kickoff here. And people will try and read into it, whether it looks nervy and edgy because Salah's only in his underpants at this point. Normally he's in his shorts. Like, I mean, we're generally going to get into like stupid sorts of kind of breakdown on the footage like that. When it comes to substitutes, as I say, if you have somebody who's irate coming off a pitch when they come off, and we've seen it before where they're not willing to shake hands with their manager, etc., 30 seconds cool down isn't going to be enough. That's when things might get interesting. But there's going to be an extra press officer in every single Premier League club who's going to be working that touchline, being like, don't say this. Hey, man, just relax, chill out, calm down. The only reason we're doing this is because they're paying us extra money to do this, so just chill. I can't see it changing too much. It will lead to a couple of, like, goose that lay golden eggs, and that's what it's going to be there for, I reckon.
Any other business?
Am I wrong?
Are you ever wrong, Willie?
I'm always wrong, mate.
What have you been most wrong about?
You said to me that you thought this was a really good idea before. So what's great about it?
I don't know, mate. Just your war of attritions made me got thinking, maybe Ollie Wilson's right. It's terrible. Everything's fucked. No, I think it's a good idea in the sense that it's a good idea on the back of a series of bad ideas which have changed the sport for the worse, in my opinion, whereas this feels like quite a harmless little addition. And if you get one moment a season, Ollie, that's good enough. Like, if you get an Erling Haaland, or I'm picking on Haaland, name a big Premier League player who just turns around and wants to give the interview as soon as he's off, and he's like, "This is," says something great.
Mate,
you got your.
I was talking to somebody about this the other day. I remember being after a West Bromwich Albion game, and Peter Odemwingie just went off on the Nigerian national team setup, and I won't give too many details about it, but like
Wait a second, Peter Odemwingie.
Yeah.
Did he play for Nigeria?
Yeah, he was Nigerian, yeah.
Okay, what did he say?
I won't go into it too much because we ended up like giving away kind of the, all right, well, we won't bring this up too much. But he basically just expressed his frustration at the Nigerian national team setup, and like completely unprompted. It was a game against like West Brom against Stoke. And we asked Peter, like, oh, how are you doing? How was the game today? All this kind of stuff. And he just went on this tangent about the national team setup, and it was crazy. And I remember driving down the M6, going back home, and the West Bromwich Albion press officer at the time rang me up and said, "Hey, did you get those quotes about Peter Odemwingie?" I was like, "Yeah, it was very very interesting what he said. Yeah, it's." I've sent it over to the guy that I like sent all the quotes over to and stuff. And he was like, is there any way that you could just can those? Because, he kind of went off on one, and we're trying to, and we'll help you out next time something needs to be helped out. But like, and that was, I said, yeah, okay, fine. I'll let the guy know, like, let's just sit on this and you guys will help us out at another point, etc. But this is opening the door for that potential to be live on national TV.
Also,
which is crazy to open that door.
Since his retirement from professional football, do you know this, Ollie?
What, Peter Odemwingie?
Odemwingie is qualified as a PGA professional golfer.
Really? I did not know.
There we go, folks. A little known fact about Peter Odemwingie.
Love that.
He's also born in Uzbekistan. Very interesting history. Anyway, no, look, I think it's proof will be in the pudding. I just think that if we can get one in a season, that's all you need sometimes.
Get Jack Grealish when he gets brought off after 25 minutes. Get him on the second day of the season. Jack, where's your career going?
Do you think, okay, here's another one, Ollie. Do you think this might start to influence coaches' decisions? Like if Arne Slot brings off Mo Salah, he's then thinking, oh, God, they're going to interview Mo Salah there. Like, do you think they might start to be a little bit more tentative?
Well, now we're back to the BBC documentary paradox of, is the cameras being there affecting what happens? I mean, the other thing is, is if you've got a player that's not potentially in the starting 11 normally, but towards the end of a transfer window, they play because the club wants to put them in the shop window against a lesser side or in a League Cup game or something like that, and then they come off as a substitute. You're then opening up the questions on the sideline during a game to things like contracts, potential clubs, etc. And I don't know if clubs and players are necessarily completely ready for that. There'll be somebody who'll get caught out at some point and something will get said. And I mean, did you see the Rory Smith discussion about I can't remember who it was now, but there was I think it was a Leicester player that was linked with Liverpool, but because Rory Smith asked Liverpool about it because he got an inside scoop on it, Liverpool was so irate that Leicester had let the information leak when it was literally just Rory Smith and nobody else, that Liverpool shut the deal down, and literally his influence affected whether that player went to Liverpool or not, which is brutal and sad, to be honest, because...
Well, maybe you should have kept his mouth shut.
Well, but it wasn't even the player. It was the club. Like, somebody who knew Rory Smith at the club we have had an offer from Liverpool, just kind of something under the table. Rory spoke to Liverpool. Liverpool were pissed off that had come out, and then Liverpool shut the whole transfer deal down and literally changed...
But do you think when Leicester told Rory Smith that, they wanted him to go and tell Liverpool?
I mean, it's just... It's that kind of thing where, like, these small things are going to affect livelihoods of people, and we're just opening another door to it. I mean, I'm kind of fine with it. Like, I think it will be interesting. It's one of the things I don't hate. I don't really understand why we're allowing it to happen. Like, it looks great in America because the Americans are so well trained with their media training, and they've all been through like college football, college soccer, college hockey, college basketball, and the audience is massive there, so they all get trained how to deal with these questions. Like, how many 90s professional footballers would you trust to be in front of a camera during a game?
Yeah, I mean... But they're all the best ones, aren't they?
They are
your
the
Mersons,
best.
your Tony Adams, that's why the 90s footballers are all the lads on the radio, by the way. That's why they're all on TalkSport, 90s, early noughties, because they're actually they have a personality.
And all the early noughties ones are boring, dull as dishwater compared to the 90s ones. The 90s ones have got stories, and all the other ones
That's
are
why, people don't want to hear this, but, well, maybe they do, but Jamie O'Hara and Jason Cundy on TalkSport's Sports Bar, 10 to 1, is one of the most popular radio shows one of the most popular shows on radio in this country. And if you take away the BBC, Jamie O'Hara got kind of slated recently because he was on some TV show and he said, I'm on one of the biggest radio stations in the country. And he actually is, that Sports Bar show. Anyway, my point here is that Cundy's a footballer of the 80s, 90s, O'Hara's very 90s. And yeah, they just had time to cultivate a personality, and they didn't get any kind of
media savvy
edge and character and uniqueness hammered out of them from age 15. Let's wrap up with some F1, Ollie. Norris says Austria pole lap close to perfection.
Yeah, sensational today. I was watching this earlier. Lando Norris has thrown away. I mean, him and Oscar Piastri. It's about 22 points separating them in the Drivers' World Championship. Piastri's out-qualified Norris 4-2 this year so far when it comes to pole positions in Grand Prix, and McLaren have got the best car on the grid. And so we get to Austria, where Lando Norris last year had a big coming together with Max Verstappen. It's probably the race that cost Lando Norris the Drivers' World Championship because Verstappen ran him off the road. Norris took no points. Verstappen took, I think, 12 points in the end, and that was a big enough gap to extend the advantage that the Red Bull driver had. So there's a lot of kind of comings together when it came to qualifying today. And there were a lot of questions about whether Lando Norris had the guts to pull out a big lap in the big moment here at the Austrian Grand Prix. And in fairness to him, he was sensational. His first lap in Q3 in the final part of qualifying was unbelievable and put him on pole anyway. There's an asterisk in that Pierre Gasly span out at the final turn of his qualifying lap, which caused a yellow flag to be shown, which then caused both Max Verstappen and Piastri to put the brakes on what was potentially the laps that would have competed with Lando Norris. Norris, in the meantime, on his second lap in Q3 in the final part of qualifying, extended his advantage on pole position. Doesn't really mean anything. It just showed that he could go a bit faster and that he was always going to be on pole, probably. But there's still that question mark of whether Verstappen or Piastri would have been able to push him had it not been for Pierre Gasly's error that caused then this concertina effect of slowing down a couple of laps for a few people. So Norris had this unbelievable lap. It was near perfection when it came to the Austrian Grand Prix, but you still got to do it on Sunday. Got to find a victory. And I hope he does, because it keeps the title race alive. And he's got Charles Leclerc between him and his teammate as well, which is a huge thing, because if you had the two McLarens together going into turn one, and there was a chance for Piastri to maybe take the advantage coming out of turn one, that's a big advantage to have, because when it comes to team orders, everything's kind of off when it comes to the first lap of a Grand Prix, because you've got 20 cars going down to this same small turn, big concertina effect. You can have some idiot in the back that will cause an incident, etc. So it's about getting everybody safely through the first couple of corners. But with Austria, you've got one corner and then another long straight and then the next corner. So if you can be first out of that corner, whether it was with McLaren, with Norris or Piastri, if Piastri overtook Norris, there's a strong chance that McLaren say, right, hold position, we keep this as Piastri 1, Norris 2. The fact that Norris is now sat on pole means that, in theory, McLaren will say, right, hold off Leclerc. Piastri, your job is to defend against Leclerc as well. For Norris takes them through the first corner and then should, in theory, go on to win the Grand Prix. Easier said than done, but it's a big come up on a Saturday for him.
I thought you were going to talk about, did you see Lewis Hamilton's kind of wedding dress leg outfit?
I don't pay attention to this sort of stuff, Dave. You know me. I'm about the on-track action. I don't do the whole... Lewis Hamilton's not on my radar at this point this season. He's driving in a Ferrari. He's moved to a worse team in Ferrari, expecting it to be better. And I don't understand why he made that move when Mercedes were always making steps forward and he was always the driver ahead of George Russell. And all it's done is that him departing Mercedes to go to Ferrari has put him behind Charles Leclerc, who knows that car and knows how to drive it. probably set up more for Leclerc than anybody else. So Hamilton's struggling with that. He's struggling in a team anyway that's behind what Mercedes are doing at this point. And then George Russell's now the number one top dog ahead of Antonelli at Mercedes. So Russell's having the time of his life. Everything in terms of what you wear turning up to the track, I couldn't care any less about, to be honest, man. The only thing I've enjoyed about the off-track incidents in Austria is all the Dutch and Austrian fans that set up table sliding competitions, where it's how many wooden tables you can slide across, like a kid's slip and slide with beer instead of water on it, and they try and test people to see how far they can slide on. That's about the most interesting off-track action that I've seen. I'm not getting into a tyres here, mate. You're not luring me.
Ollie, we could be venturing. I commit to watching 2 Grand Prix a year, or at least the highlights thereof. Watch the Brazilian Grand Prix. It was in Sao Paulo, wasn't it?
Yeah, so
that was back in November.
Sensational. Yeah, that's last season.
So give me one this summer that I should try and tune into. We've got the Spanish Grand Prix. Oh, no, that's gone,
that's done.
The Austrian Grand Prix's gone. Sorry, into July. The British Grand Prix at Silverstone. Yeah. Are you doing any work on that, by the way?
No work on it, but it is that's a sensational Grand Prix. Like, Silverstone is a great Grand Prix circuit. I hate the street circuits. I love traditional tracks, and this is a traditional track that has fast corners, slow corners, and tests every attribute of a car. So the British Grand Prix, Spa-Francorchamps in Belgium, unbelievable circuit.